At least she's somebody who stood up for science on more than one occasion and has actually stood up for women in an increasing world of progression for progression's sake. But we've all noticed that these progressive ideologues have been very anti science, especially in a lot more recent years, as non binaries have tried to claim that they are trans and become part of the LGBTQ community. Which is funny because the mere existence of non binary and lack of sex, biological sex, and how they say sex is or gender is a social construct would mean that trans people aren't real because then there would be nothing to transition to or from if it wasn't something that was real. These people don't actually like trans people. They don't care about trans people. They lie about it for brownie points, or else they would realize that if you said that there's no such thing as male or female, there's no reason for a trans person to get surgery or hormone replacements if they aren't trying to be the opposite sex because sex doesn't exist. Which brings us to science being canceled because George Takei said when you defend so called biological sex, you sound scientifically ignorant and you elevate transphobia. No, elevating transphobia is saying that there is no biological sex, so trans people have nothing to transition to or from. Saying that there is biological sex is not the same as saying trans people should be hated, should be hunted down, should be killed, whatever the fuck your definition of transphobia is. For most people, it means afraid, and most people aren't afraid of trans people unless they meet them in the middle of the alley and they thought it was a hot chick until something starts poking them. We separate our sports teams based on biological sex because we know there's an inherent difference. When we test medications, we separate them based off of sex because we know that sometimes medicines affect people in different ways. The whole trans thing is the whole search paper. I don't know if it was ever disputed, was because people were having the wrong amount of gray matter and white matter in their brains because men have more gray matter while women tend to have more white matter in their brains. So to say that it doesn't exist means why the fuck are trans people not feeling like they're the right gender then? It's people like you who elevate this transphobia that you talk about so much because you're literally saying there is no reason for trans people to exist. How can you feel like an opposite gender that doesn't exist? But you can never expect these people to understand that and logic it out because they can't even understand basic scientific concepts. Now, I'm not saying that you have to believe trans people exist or that they're in the wrong body or any of that. What you want to believe is your own personal opinion as long as you don't go and harm people because whatever they say they are. I really couldn't care less, just like I couldn't care less the gender that they say that they want to be. But when you want to cancel biological sex, you inevitably cancel transgenders as well. Because these woke leftists, especially the celebrities, have never actually cared. They don't care if you're gay. They don't care if you're trans. They don't care if you're black. They don't care if you're a woman. They have never cared. They live their lives in these rich, luxurious mansions, talking about how guns are bad, why they have private security, talking about how walls are bad, why they live in gated communities. These people are out of touch with reality, especially George Takei. He has said some of the craziest fucking shit. This dude does not look up a damn thing before he tweets anything. It's crazy that he could have been a part of what was one of the most sophisticated scientific shows and movies ever made that has painted the way for so much in the scientific community, from basic things like cell phones to large ideal concepts. And even the show admits biological sex is a thing, but yet you don't think it is. And his source is a Slate writer, because we all know Slate is 100% trustful. Apparently, they do some medical research. As far as I can aware, not biological. They're not a biologist. I could be wrong, but from what I've found out about this person, doesn't seem like they are. And you'll be able to tell very clearly that this person doesn't know what they're talking about. Now, this person starts talking about non-binary cells and non-binary hormones. Now, you may be asking, what are those? And I'd be happy to tell you. If they existed, they are not a real thing. There's no such thing as a non-binary hormone. There are hormones that do infect both genders, and technically all hormones, or I shouldn't say all, but the vast majority of hormones are non-binary. Women do have testosterone, men do have estrogen,
but the doses based on the gender is different. Men have very high testosterone and low estrogen, and vice versa for women. On top of this, their whole argument seems to be that gender itself is malleable. Everybody knows that it's malleable. If you line up men and women, 100 each, it's not going to be a straight line from the biggest, buffest dude down to the smallest, scrawny chick. There's going to be men and women dispersed in between them. And it seems like their main argument is that intersex people exist. Intersex people is not a new gender. It is not. It is not non-binary. It is actually a combination of the two, and it's a birth defect. If a person is born with 11 fingers, they are not a new kind of human. They're not a new species. They're not something beyond Homo sapien. They are human with a birth defect. On top of this, he used one person who doesn't seem to have any real pull in the scientific community, isn't even verified, found a tweet from 2019 from 6 months ago and is using that as proof to go against an entire scientific community and decades of research. Now, that's not to say just because it's old, it's right. Just because a bunch of scientists said it is means that it is. They've been wrong before. Like before, they thought the earth was flat. Now we know that it's round. They can be wrong, but you have to be able to prove them wrong. They haven't proved what non-binary hormones are. They haven't proved that binary sex isn't a thing. They haven't shown us anything that is actually outside of male and female. Outside of, what was it, 5 factors, I believe, that determines your sex: your exterior genitalia, your interior reproductive organs, what you produce, whether it's sperm or eggs, your chromosomes, and your hormones. And this is one of the biggest things that makes me wonder if they're a real scientist, is this fallacy that they use. They actually say that, ask yourself, have you seen your chromosomes? Do you know the genes of the people you love, the hormones of the people you work with, the state of their cells? That is a fallacy. Just because you haven't personally witnessed it does not mean it doesn't exist. This would be like saying that the moon, we can't say the moon is round because all we've ever seen is a flat surface. It's like saying the earth can't be round because you haven't personally gone up in space and saw the curvature. It's like saying, well, you've never been to a zoo, you've never seen a penguin in real life, so penguins can't exist. Of course, you haven't seen your chromosomes and well, you can look at a lot of your cells, not all your cells, or your hormones. But funny what they mention, or what they leave out, is the other 3 factors. And one of them is exterior genitalia, and one of them is what you produce. Most people know if they have a dick or if they don't. Most people know if they produce eggs or if they don't. But it's funny that they leave that out because that is something that you could actually witness firsthand. On top of that, we actually can see the presence of hormones, as typically testosterone allows for people to grow like beards and a lot more hair all over their body. It allows for denser denser bones and bigger muscles. So yes, we can actually witness hormones based off of the effects that we know that they have on people. This is not a real scientist. Nobody in the scientific community would ever take a paper that said, because I haven't seen it, it's not true. We laugh at flat earthers for using this type of logic. On top of this, they ignore literally everything else, like the fact that women can give birth but men can't. How do you explain that if there is no biological gender? I don't know what happened to the party of science, but they are not that anymore, and I'm not even so sure they ever really were. I think they were just better at manipulating us. So next time a woke progressive wants to tell you there's no biological gender, ask them, why are they so transphobic?